From Moving Traditions, this is At 13, a podcast exploring what it really means to prepare for and become a bar or bat mitzvah. I'm your host, Sarah Ivry. And we're thinking of this series as a toolbox, a companion for all you parents out there and for your kids as you deal with the spiritual, emotional, and practical issues that pop up in the bar or bat mitzvah process. We're going to do our best to ease your anxiety. We'll explore some of the physical and emotional hurdles that kids face at this age, and we'll offer tips for making the big day a little easier, whether it's in the ceremony or in the celebration. We've got all kinds of experts to help us on the way: rabbis, psychologists, parents, professors, journalists, kids, even a party DJ. They'll share their wisdom on how to get the most out of this experience. But first, let's find out how we got here. Why does this rite of passage even happen at the age of 13? I spoke with a rabbi.
My name's Rabbi Daniel Brenner. I'm the Chief of Education and Program for Moving Traditions, which is a nonprofit.
Rabbi Brenner is also the guy who came up with the idea for this podcast, and he traces it, the Bar Mitzvah at 13, back to the Mishnah.
In the Mishnah, which is the collection of writings of the rabbis in the 2nd century, 3rd century, they talk about life stages. And they have this great text, which I really like, which talks about how at age 10 you learn basically the laws and how to repeat the laws. And at age 13, you are responsible for the commandments. That's where the idea of mitzvah in the bat mitzvah or bar mitzvah comes from. Then at age 18, you stand under the wedding canopy. At age 20, you pursue your livelihood. At age 30, you have full strength. At age 40, understanding. At age 50, you can give counsel. Like they have like this life stage stuff planned out. It's fantastic. It works that way for everybody.
Right.
It's across the board. Map. Everybody immediately, like when they turn, 40, becomes, very wise. So it's just it's a wonderful way of articulating that there was, even in the ancient world, recognize a time between puberty and early adulthood. So between 13 and 18 at that time. And that to me is fascinating. There has, for a long time, for centuries, been a recognition that puberty does not really equate with adulthood. It is the beginning of this teen process. And so I don't think this is a new thing. I just feel like as I started to read more and more about bar and bat mitzvah and started to think about it, I just saw all of these references to adulthood, and I didn't think they really made sense. And they didn't 2,000 years ago, and they don't today.
Here in America, this rite of passage evolved in its own unique way.
American Jews didn't have that much money, 100 years ago. So
that's Mark Oppenheimer. He writes about religion, and he's the author of the book 13 and a Day, the bar and bat mitzvah across America.
Even when you get more observant Eastern European Jews coming over, the idea of what it would mean to celebrate a boy becoming a man was maybe he was called to the Torah, maybe he read a few lines or had one aliyah, one little piece of that week's reading, and then the whole service moved on, and then maybe there was some schnapps afterwards, and maybe his parents sponsored a little luncheon afterwards, but it was a much more subdued thing for most Jews, especially the more observant ones who were bringing back the bar mitzvah, because these were poor or working class people. So it's really not until after World War II that you get what we think of as the big production today, where all Jews across the spectrum from, Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, and other think about this as something they want to do, often for boys and girls, and they have the financial means to make a big production of it and have a big party. So it's a post-war phenomenon to have the big bar bat mitzvah as we stereotypically think of it today.
Families still pay a lot of attention to the service itself and how we celebrate afterwards. Take Nikki Silberman. She's super stressed about details like how the traditional head covering is going to stay on people's heads.
I think my anxieties have been more surrounding all of the details of being a full-time working parent with 3 kids and being responsible to put a party together and not be in a financial position to have somebody help me with all of that. Did you remember to order the clips for the kippot? And those are the things that get me stressed out.
Mark Oppenheimer.
To me, the central question about the party is, who are you as a family, right? If you're a family that is always having over-the-top catered events, I suppose you should have one for for all of your simchas, for birthdays and weddings and bar and bat mitzvahs. If you're a family that doesn't have over-the-top catered events with light shows and laser shows and rappers performing, then having one for the bar bat mitzvah is a little bit twisted because you're welcoming your child into normal adult Jewish life. So I think, to me, what gets me sad isn't the size of a party per se. It's when I feel like the party doesn't reflect the values of the family or the child. If what you have is a super materialistic 12 or 13-year-old and they get their parents to give them a super materialistic 12 or 13-year-old's party, you can't say that it's made them any worse off, right? But if you have a kid who has more of a spiritual gift, who's really thoughtful about religion, and then the parents want to throw a big party because they want all their coworkers to come, then something kind of unfortunate has happened, which is you haven't honored who the child is.
But as we'll hear over these next episodes, there's a lot more to it.
The fact is that most people will still have their kids become bar bat mitzvah. And I think the thing is, how is bar bat mitzvah going to continue to change so that as our lives change and as people connect less to prayer as a source of Jewish life, how can we create new ways of connecting, within Jewish life and with meaning and with joy?
Deborah Meyer is the CEO and co-founder of Moving Traditions.
We really wanted to create interesting opportunities to reach people at moments in their lives when they felt like they might need something of meaning and that Judaism might be the thing that would add meaning to their lives. I think the bar mitzvah has really changed enormously in the Reform movement. There wasn't really bar mitzvah for boys. And so, in fact, bat mitzvah as a ritual spread much more quickly in the conservative movement, which might be counterintuitive, because they were doing bar mitzvah, whereas the Reform movement was doing confirmation. So the thinking was that was much more an important way of kind of keeping kids connected to Jewish life. When the Reform movement decided to go back to bar mitzvah, they also went to bat mitzvah. And so today we have the Saturday morning experience that most of us know.
It's an experience that depends on years of study, whether in Hebrew school, a day school, or with a private tutor. But memorizing some Hebrew or a speech is a lot different from spirituality. And I wonder, is it realistic to expect kids who are only in middle school to have that too?
I think kids are really different.
That's Rabbi Tamara Cohen. She's the chief of innovation at Moving Traditions.
If you have a spiritual kid, absolutely. Some of that might happen in synagogue in the moment when they're reading Torah, and some of it might happen in a private moment when you're getting dressed in the morning before the bar mitzvah, and it could be a moment of blessing. It could be a kiss on their head. It could be trying on the talit that belonged to a grandparent or trying on a new talit. I remember the walk over to the gym where my bat mitzvah was really strongly. I remember the sun shining. I remember being with my family. I think that was a moment of spirituality. We want it to happen, yes, through the bar bat mitzvah experience, but some of that will happen in the synagogue and some of it might happen in other moments. Remembering that there's something sacred in there, both in the moments when we're like yelling at our kids or wanting to yell at our kids to practice from the other room, but too busy and not really paying attention. Then maybe like the spiritual moment there is to actually sit down with them for a moment and listen to what's going on in their day.
Mark Oppenheimer is a little bit more skeptical.
The ability to think deep thoughts as a young kid and to really wrestle with any ideas outside of your immediate ken of popularity and hair products and pop music and whether you're fighting with your sibling. That gift to think beyond that is distributed across all sectors of society randomly, and it's something that you're probably born with. And so you will find kids in very, very religious communities who have no spiritual gift at all and don't really care about God and are just going through the motions. And maybe they know a lot because they go to yeshiva, but they don't care. And then you'll find kids in entirely secular and sometimes quite materialistic, crass settings where the parents don't care about spirituality. It's not clear that the rabbi does. Everyone seems to be going through the motions except this boy or girl who is totally in awe of ideas of ancestry and God and tradition. And so that can be a very moving thing.
Sharon Brous is the rabbi at Ikar, a spiritual community in Los Angeles. She loves working with kids who are 12 and 13.
I so appreciate that at this age, when kids are really, for the first time, starting to pull away from their parents and starting to find their own voices and really become independent thinkers, that Our tradition brings them back into the room with their parents and with the traditional text, and often with a rabbi or a teacher or guide, and really pushes them to press pause for a moment and talk with each other and wrestle with and think about, what does it mean to be who I am in the world right now? What does it mean to be a Jew in the world? What does it mean to be a human being in the world? What say do I have in the way that I live my life? What are my dreams? What are my aspirations? What's my role in the community now? And so in some ways, it's actually a really perfect moment to do that at age 13, even though adulthood is not, many years after.
We'll be hearing more from Rabbi Brous and other experts, including a few kids going through the process, like Ruby.
First, we found the service dress, and then we found the party dress, and I grew out of the service dress, so we're trying to find a new one. Honestly, it's less of a big deal to me than just the whole thing together. When I think of a bat mitzvah, I don't think about I'm going to be an adult in the Jewish community as much as I think about I'm doing so much work for this service, and then I'm going to have a great party, and I'm going to get to be with all my friends and all my family. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
And we'll explore some of the challenges tweens face with author Peggy Orenstein.
I think it's really important not to demonize particular girls or shame particular girls around what they're wearing or not wearing. But I think we can engage girls in discussion of what self-objectification is, what it means, why the culture everywhere around them is pushing them to self-objectify and see that as a source of power, and what the impact of that we know can be on them.
That's next time on At 13. The At 13 podcast is produced by Michelle Siegel and me. I'm Sarah Ivry. Our executive producer is Rabbi Daniel Brenner. Funding to support At 13 comes from the Jewish Community Foundation of Los Angeles, Crown Family Philanthropies, JUF Breakthrough Fund of Chicago, Michael and Carol Lowenstein Foundation, and the many individual donors who support Moving Traditions. The At 13 podcast is powered by Moving Traditions, a nonprofit organization that helps teens grow into healthy, connected Jewish adults. You can learn more about our Bar and Bat Mitzvah initiative at movingtraditions.org.